March the 12th, 2018. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mrs. Keller?
Here.
Mr. Browning?
Here.
Mr. Rohr? Mr. Hellinger?
Here.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Here.
Mayor Riggle?
Here.
Motion to excuse Councilman Rohr.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer, a second by Mrs. Keller. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Tonight's invocation will be led by Pastor Curtis of the Second Baptist Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll all please stand.
I really need that.
Probably not.
Really?
Go for it.
Father, we thank you for, first of all, allowing us to see a day we've never seen. We realize that it wasn't promised to us, but you gave it to us by grace. Father, you said that we should pray for our leaders. So we're here to pray for our leaders, Father, to give them wisdom, give them courage to stand on your word and then stand on the law. We ask that you just bless them with enough knowledge to make the right decisions. Bring them together, Father, make them one as you and your son are one. We ask a blessing on the city council, on this city, and all that they do. And we ask this blessing in your son's name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Pastor Curtis. Item 4 on the agenda is the approval of the motion summary of the regular meeting of council held February 26, 2018, as recorded and transcribed. What is the wish of council?
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Schaefer, a second by Mr. Browning. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Item 5 is the consent agenda. Elaine, if you'll please read this into the record.
Item A, acceptance of the motion summary of the Shade Tree meeting held on January 23rd, 2018 as recorded and transcribed. Item B, acceptance of the motion summary of the Historic Preservation Commission meeting held on January 24th, 2018 as recorded and transcribed. Item C, acceptance of the motion summary of the Finance Committee meeting held on August 16th, 2017 as recorded and transcribed. Item D, acceptance of the motion summary of the Civil Service Committee meeting held on January 3rd, 2018 as recorded and transcribed. Item E, acceptance of the motion summary of the Planning Commission meeting held on February 7th, 2018 as recorded and transcribed. Item F, resolution number 18-15, a resolution accepting the recommendations of the Delaware City Tax Incentive Review Council on the status of the 2017 Community Reinvestment Area, Enterprise Zone, and Tax Increment Financing Programs. Item G, established March 26, 2018 at 7:30 p.m. as a date and time for a public hearing and second reading for ordinance number 18-21, an ordinance for Medrock LLC approving a zoning tax amendment to the existing Willowbrook Farm Tract PUD overlay zoning text plan unit development to allow a modification to the maximum dwelling units and density to multifamily areas 3 and 4, to allow additional dwelling units to area 3 and removing units to area 4, thereby decreasing the overall units currently allowed in total located on the east side of Houck Road on approximately 36 acres on property zoned R6 multifamily with a PUD overlay.
Thank you. Before I ask for a motion, I would like to ask staff to take a look at the community reinvestment, the CRA, as making sure that this is targeted areas only. At the last meeting, I was a little surprised to see some of those. So if they could take a look at that, I would appreciate it.
We'll follow up.
Please. I take the other ones out though too. Because we've already approved it at that meeting.
Yeah,
I
it
think
was
for future.
recommended. I think the concern is the residential CRAs
Yes.
in some of the areas and taking a look at those boundaries and looking at whether they may have to be reconsidered, some of the boundaries.
Right. Yes, yeah.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Schaefer, a second by Mr. Jones. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Item 6 is time set aside for letters, petitions, or anything public comment that is not on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone in the public that would like to come forward at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to the committee reports. Mr. Jones?
No, at this time, Mayor.
Mrs. Keller?
I have none.
Mr. Browning? Mr. Hollinger?
Finance Committee met, and you'll see some additional information coming from us in the future. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Schaefer?
Nothing.
Thank you. And we'll move on to, we'll read item 8, 9, 10, and 11 into the record, please.
Ordinance number 18-11, an ordinance for Delmore Dwellings Corporation for approval of a rezoning amendment to allow a PMU planned mixed-use overlay district at 250 Curtis Street on the north side of Firestone Drive on approximately 3.64 acres on property zone POI, Planned Office Institutional District, for an actively owned and managed 40 dwelling unit, low and moderate income affordable housing development. Ordinance number 18-12, an ordinance for Delmore Dwelling Corporation for approval of a conditional use permit allowing the placement of a PMU, planned mixed-use overlay district at 250 Curtis Street on the north side of Firestone Drive on approximately 3.64 acres on property zone POI, Planned Office Institutional District, for an actively owned and managed 40 dwelling unit, low and moderate income affordable housing development. Ordinance number 18-13, an ordinance for Delmore Dwelling Corporation for approval of a preliminary development plan for an actively owned and managed 40 dwelling unit, low and moderate income affordable housing development at 250 Curtis Street on the north side of Firestone Drive on approximately 3.64 acres on property zone POI PMU, Planned Office Institutional District with a planned mixed-use overlay district. And excuse me, ordinance number 18-14, an ordinance for Delmore Dwelling Corporation for approval of a comprehensive plan amendment on the future land use map from medium density single family to mixed use at 250 Curtis Street on the north side of Firestone Drive and approximately 3.64 acres on property zone POI PMU, Planned Office Institutional District with a planned mixed use overlay district for an actively owned and managed 40 dwelling unit, low and moderate income affordable housing development.
Thank you. Mr. Eflin?
Madam Mayor, members of council, this was presented at your last meeting, and I believe you held a public hearing. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions from Mr. Eflin?
I have just a couple points of clarification, perhaps. So I wanted to just re-clarify this whole idea of density versus per person density. And if Mr. Eflin could maybe tell me one more time just why the per person density makes a little bit more sense in this case than the actual units per acre.
Well, I think they're both certainly germane, both good ways to look at density. And I think the density here has come down significantly from the original proposal to be more in line with multifamily areas, at least some multifamily areas in the city. In this case, given the clientele and its very specific nature of clientele and the development in this case, the units themselves, the proposal, and the fact that you're more than likely going to have just one person in every unit. Could you have more than one? You could have more than one. But as Mr. Wilson testified, I think at some point during the Planning Commission hearing, it's usually about 95, 96% of their units are single occupancy units. And so therefore that's a little bit different than a traditional apartment building or even a single family house or something like that. And I think it's therefore makes it all in total germane to look at a person per acre density calculation in this case, rather than just saying, well, there's 40 units proposed and that could be our typical dwelling unit, gross acreage density calculation. In this case, there's 40 units, but in all likelihood, that means 40 people. Does that help answer your question?
Yes, so that makes this unique in terms of the way that we're looking at the density, specifically because of the clientele.
Yeah, and this proposal overall being brought forward as a plan, mixed-use overlay, a plan development is a very unique proposal in this case, in all respects.
Because I would say typically for me that the just looking at the bottom line density number, it would be too high, but I'm willing to make that special exception in this case because this is so different than your typical, just your standard density calculation because of the fact that one person per unit will be mostly the standard. My other question is regarding the comprehensive plan amendment. So if we were uncomfortable with amending the comprehensive plan, especially because we have a plan to be doing that in a more comprehensive way, that wouldn't impact the approval in this particular case if we just said, why don't we hold off and let that be handled during that process? Am I correct in?
Yeah, you do. If you pass the other cases, that would allow the project to move forward as proposed before you today. You don't have to amend the comprehensive plan, future land use map if you don't want to. We don't always do it. Or councils haven't always done it in the past. Probably a more accurate way to say that. I think if you signal your intention that way, you don't even have to deny that case if you don't want to. I suspect the applicant, Jim Wilson, is here. Might actually just withdraw that case for you. It's the last one in the list of cases. So just a thought between everybody. Isn't it the last? Okay.
Well, the last of the four.
So if you move through the other cases and you pass those, if that's your pleasure, then he might just withdraw that case at that point if you asked him to.
I don't know how everyone else feels about that, but
What's the downside of just amending?
Definitely ask him, but it's his application.
my fear is just doing it on a piece by piece basis rather than usually when you're looking at comprehensive land use, just by its very name, it's more comprehensive in nature. So it's not a major issue, but just one that I feel like if we're going to be making changes to our future land use map, perhaps it should be done at the time that the comprehensive plan is done in a comprehensive way, not to overuse that word. Doesn't make a huge difference to me either way.
I mean, I would concur with that. I think doing it piecemeal is really not the big picture view, which is what the comp plan is meant to do, is provide that big picture, kind of getting down into the weeds. With that said, we would want those changes represented in the new land use map and in the new comp plan when that comes to fruition in 16 months from now or whenever that is.
Yeah, and we'll have to see how that process unfolds. Our future land use map may be a different kind of non-parcel based map, might be more thematic. We have to go through that
Sure.
process.
Chris, what's your thoughts? You're awful quiet.
I agree with Lisa 100%.
Okay. All right. We do have two people that would like to speak on tonight on this subject. It is not a public hearing, but there's only two. As long as it's something that I have not heard before, and the rest of us haven't heard before. We're going to do it. You have 5 minutes before the public hearing. Craig Campbell, please state your name and address for the record.
Thanks. My name is Craig Campbell. I live at 183 Curtis Street, and I would have been here for the public hearing, but I was dewatering my neighbor's house. So it was kind of an emergency. I had to get her out of literally hot water. I was thinking about the parking lot issue. There was
Pull the microphone towards
I'm sorry.
these things.
I was thinking about the parking issues in the parking lot and everything over there. And I looking at it right now, thinking about it. We realized that he has 60 units. Delmore has 60 units here in the city already. And when this thing is done, everybody is going to be allowed to come. Sooner or later, it's going to be a venue. So we need to think about that. I don't think that's ever been brought up, that there is a possibility that every parking spot is going to be full. And if something happens, we're going to be able to get in and help people, you know? And I know I said this before, Mayor, and I'm sorry for saying it again. When he digs and gets going on it, we basically have a year and a half that we need to have some really good sidewalks on Curtis Street. So somebody really needs to take a look at that. We have a year and a half to get it done. If somebody gets hurt on our watch, we're not doing them any good, you know? And keep in mind too, this is a heavy industrial area. We can even smell the foundry, you know, all the way over there. Every now and then we can smell the thing. It's not a lazy residential area. It's not a neighborhood per se as neighborhoods go. You know, there's a reason why he chose this spot anyway, is because it's not really in the middle of a neighborhood. Not a lot of people should complain. It's not that big of a deal. We shouldn't have a building that's 38 foot tall. And in the paperwork, he is going to be allowed to make his buildings 10% bigger if he so deems it, and staff approves. 10% bigger is going to make my little ranch house an ant. For years and years and years now, Curtis Street's had little houses along it, and we're going to build this thing, which I believe we're going to, and we should. It's our moral duty to build this. It really is. We should do this. These people need someplace safe, someplace easygoing. We're safe, easygoing people over there. We really are. But we have to make it safe and think about what we have to do to get there and just put it in our plan and make sure we do it. So with that, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then, thank you. And Suzanne, if you'll also give your name and address for the record.
Yes, my address is 2978 North 3 Beeson K Road in Sunbury. And I heard about this and I really came not prepared to speak. So I'm going to focus on you because I'm not a real speaker. But I was from New Albany until about 5 years ago. And one morning I got up and I called to my daughter to come down, and she didn't come down. And we saw no signs of the depression that she suffered from. And when we had her funeral, many people came from the school and they shared wonderful stories of things, you know, she had done, things she had done for other students. One Spanish teacher who said she really enjoyed Madison's comments on her Spanish papers. She said the rule was you had to write one sentence in reply, and it had to be in Spanish. And Madison would write several sentences just to get her point across, and she always made her response funny. And I just enjoyed knowing that, you know. And what I have since found out is that so many young people suffer from depression, and it's all around us, whether we have a building for people or not. These are kids that need help. Madison left some notes for all of us. And she said, Mom has asked me before if I'm sad, and I'm not sad. I'm depressed. She could name it, but she couldn't tell us out loud what it was. There is still that stigma to this. And she says, it is so, 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 so painful. And I thought, I could not see it. I could not see it. She even wrote, she can't believe Mom can't see it. But she couldn't tell me. And we have to do something about our youth. We have to make it so they can talk about it. If we say not in my neighborhood, then what are we telling them? Don't talk about it. So I'm here. I'll talk about it. You can hear my voice shake. It's emotional. It's difficult for me to talk about. But we cannot turn our back on these people. And it's 90% of mental illness comes on by the time a child is 14. So yeah, they're just gonna grow up and have mental illness problems, and either we can start early treating them, or we can deal with all of what we think we know and see and attribute to mental illness. So I really hope people here will stop and step back and consider. I read something recently about Delaware being a really well-to-do, growing community. And just like New Albany, who has started to implement some kind of building there that they're going to fund and name it after Mariel Hemingway because of all the mental illness that Mariel Hemingway's family has suffered. I hope Delaware will consider being that kind of community also. So thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you for your loss. I'm sorry for your loss. Okay. What is the wish of council on ordinance number 18-11?
Move for approval of ordinance 18-11.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Schaefer, a second by Mr. Hellinger. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Move for approval of ordinance 18-12.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer, second by Mr. Hellinger. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Move for approval of ordinance 18-13.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer, second by Mr. Hellinger. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
So before we move on here, what is your recommendation? It seems like there's not support for amending the comprehensive plan. So
I think I might invite Mr. Wilson up to the microphone and see if he might, given your previous votes, just withdraw this case, if that's your pleasure.
Jim Wilson, Delmore Dwellings. I'd be happy to withdraw ordinance 1814 from the vote tonight and expect that at some point the land use there would be dealt with in a comprehensive way.
Madam Mayor, if I just may take a moment to thank everyone who has come to give us opinions, to help us maybe look at some things in a different way than we looked at them at the beginning. I know that I have learned a lot through going through this process, and I just want to really thank everyone in our community that came to help us with how we were looking at this. I know that it helped me tremendously, and I'm just deeply grateful for that. Thank you.
And I would just like to say that Jim Wilson and you've spent a lot of hours in this room and talking to the residents and talking to people and helping us all understand. So as well as you were so hidden for all these years for what you've done to help people, I'm so glad that it's in the forefront now. So thank you for what you do.
There's been some great side benefits to this process that I think will endure for some time.
Yes, thank you. So we just let 11 sit there? Do we deny it? Do we take it off? What are you going to do, Darren? I know you withdrew it.
I would probably vote to just deny it if you're not going to do it. That's cleaner, so we know what actually happened. It's not going to hang out there.
Okay, so somebody want to make a motion on ordinance 18-14?
I move to approve ordinance 18-14.
it's fine.
Okay,
It's fine. Second.
I have a motion by Mrs. Keller, second by Mr. Jones.
Right?
Yeah, and just because you
Fine.
move to approve, it doesn't mean you have to vote
Right.
for it.
Right. Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
No.
Mrs. Keller?
No.
Mr. Browning?
Nope.
Mr. Hellinger?
No.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
No.
Mayor Riggle?
No. Motion denied. Okay, item 12 is public hearing on ordinance 18-18. Elaine, if you'll please read this on the record.
Ordinance number 18-18, an ordinance amending section 933.01 of the codified ordinances of the city of Delaware, Ohio regarding intoxicating beverages prohibited and repealing its existing section 931 933.01 in its entirety and declaring an emergency. Emergency clause that this ordinance is hereby declared to be an emergency measure necessary to provide for the public peace, safety, health, and welfare of the city by allowing the city to begin beer sales at the start of the golf season, and as such will be in full force and effect immediately upon its passage.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, City Council. So this is not a new topic to the council. And part of our, the working group that worked on
For the record, could you
Yes.
state, this is Ted Miller, Park, and not, because there's a lot of people here that don't know who you
bet.
are.
Yes. My name is Ted Miller, Parks and Natural Resources Director.
Thanks, okay.
As I mentioned, it's not a new topic, but when our working group got together to work on a sustainability plan for the golf course, we looked at several improvements that we wanted to make to help the course stay more financially stable. In 2017, we made some pretty good improvements. The introduction of beer sales is another opportunity that we see as a way to make the golf course more stable financially. And it's also an opportunity that we might be able to look at supporting some local breweries, at the course also that we might be able to offer their product out of the course also. So there's some opportunities here, and we just think it'll be beneficial to the golf course and long term. I can answer any questions if you have any.
Jackie or Darren, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
This is very similar to the ordinance that I think it's identical to the ordinance we put forward. Oh man, was it 2 years ago? 3 years ago.
2014.
I know we had some discussion, and I apologize for not being at the last meeting, about whether to limit it to beer or whether to turn it into liquor. You can go either way. My advice is, I've been told we're only going to go after beer, but you don't want to limit yourself for the future, but that's entirely up to council.
So is this beer only? What about wine for the women that go? I mean, is this beer only, Jackie? Or beer and wine?
The ordinance as we wrote it is not limited. Did we change it, Ted? I don't
No,
think-
we did not change it. It's the way it's written, it's intoxicating beverages
Yeah, so
prohibited, but so.
that's my recommendation. We have the ability to do things like that, and it may be that we are just going to sell beer at the golf course regularly, but if there's a special event, you may want to bring in something. So we did want to keep it broad for that very reason.
But do we have hard liquor?
No.
We don't have plans on
As a
doing that.
policy, we would never do that.
Good. Okay, any questions for staff? Okay. We'll open this up to the public then.
Okay.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to come forward at this time on this subject? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And do you want to go to a third reading, or do you want to vote tonight?
And I would like to make some comments on that
Okay.
before you vote. Obviously, I think everyone here knows that I'm fully opposed to this, and I want to explain why it is. Our parks are meant to be a place for healthful exercise, and they're also, from what we've done with the golf course, we're trying to get more youth out there. I think the worst, it's mixed signals, and you're saying, kids, go out here, be healthy, enjoy the fresh air, but look at, Joe, Sue, and Mary, that threesome over there, all, drinking as they go around the golf course. That's one issue. The other issue is, and we talked about this when we had earlier discussions about the golf course, was unless you're a golfer, you don't go down to the golf course. And if you've been down there, you know what a wonderful area it is. And we talked about possibly opening that up for other uses of some sort, whether it's a nature trail, which would maybe ultimately tie into a bikeway that runs along the run at some point in the future, or anything like that. But if you have additional uses down there, hey, I'm going to run my jog around the nature trail. I'll stop and get beer. No, I don't need a water bottle. I'll just use a beer and jog around. You'd still be covered. You're still in the area. It would still be allowed. I don't know what the fixation is with our public about, oh, this is golf, it's like golfing and bowling. They're not really sports. If you can drink beer and do it, it's really not a sport. But really, I think it sends very mixed signals to our youth. And if we want to do this, if we think that selling alcohol is a way to get ourselves out of our financial issues, I'd say you should probably sell it at the splash pad so mom and dad can watch the kid play in the splash pad and knock a couple back. I mean, there's no difference. So I think it's a bad precedent. And I'll just leave it at that.
Any other comments by council? I know people bring coolers in there anyways on a regular basis. I've been told, I don't know, I'm not a golfer, but I've been told they come in on a regular basis and they have a beer once they get out of sight. And I hear that's been going on for years and years and years. I don't think that people are going to go there to get drunk. I think they're going to have an occasional beer while they're golfing. And I think that's something where they have golf and cigars, from what I understand. Like I said, I am not a golfer. I think, you know, if there are children there too, we're not serving it to the children. You can go to Disney World and see a parent have a beer. You can go to the zoo here in Delaware County and see an adult have a beer while they have the kids at the zoo. I think parents aren't going to get drunk while they're with their kids. I think that's, I don't know, I disagree.
I agree. I mean, alcohol is part of what, Cedar Point, Disney World, everywhere you go, and we would expect them to be reasonable and how they act. And if they don't, that's why we have the police department to deal with that. I think, you know, most golf courses you go to, they serve beer, and for the most part, don't have a problem. I respect your views, but I think this is a positive move for the golf course.
I do too.
Well, this is a second reading. We can take it to the third one if you want, or whatever you wish council is.
Is there a rush?
No.
I say, considering that Mr. Hellinger feels strongly about it, then perhaps we should just take it to a third.
Okay. All righty, let's move on to item 13, which is consideration of resolution 18-16. Elena, if you'll please read this into the record.
Resolution number 18-16, a resolution authorizing the elimination of 7 on-street parking spaces on the east side of the North Sandusky Street between Marshall Court and the alley that runs between Sandusky Street and Union Street, and designated as a no parking zone accordingly.
And if you'll also read 14 and 15, which is resolution 18-17 and 18-18.
Resolution number 18-17, a resolution designating the alley between North Sandusky Street and North Union Street as a one-way alley eastbound from North Sandusky Street to 115 feet west of North Union Street, and as a two-way alley from 115 feet west of North Union Street to North Union Street.
Are you confused?
And resolution number 18-18, a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a memorandum of understanding relating to a proposed development agreement with Delaware County relating to public use of certain county parking areas.
Thank you. This is first reading on these.
They could be acted on tonight if you'd like. If not, they are resolutions. These are really items that have been discussed with the county for the last year. We discussed this at our joint meeting. These are kind of cleanup items. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about them, but they are ready to be acted on if you'd like. If not, we can act on them at the next
Chris,
meeting.
I heard you sound confused earlier. Do you understand?
Yeah, did
14?
Is there a copy of the MOU in the packet that I missed?
It should be in there. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I probably missed it.
Yeah, it actually was an MOU that they had sent over to us in the fall during the transition between Mr. Ahmad and the new county administrators. Things slowed down a little. Plus, there was some misunderstanding, I think, between the city and the county as to what was going to be captured in the MOU.
Current
Page
MOU,
212. It's page 212.
the most modern version.
Yes, it is,
Page
and that's
212.
yeah, and that's really a one-year agreement. It indicates we will come back in a year and evaluate how the parking is working. Ultimately, we had requested of the county the ability on special occasions to use the parking garage that they established. They had some concerns about that from a security standpoint. We understand that. We'd at least like to evaluate that kind of on an annual basis between our chief and the sheriff and the county. So that's item one. Item two is the designating the alley officially in terms of the direction of that alley so that we can enforce it. And in terms of the way the traffic is flowing through there now, this would allow us to do that. There's an image up here on the screen of how that alley, it's two-way up to a certain point, and then it's one-way only going eastbound from Sandusky Street. And the final item before you is formalizing the abandonment of the parking spaces that they took when they put the courthouse in. And
Yeah, what's the final deeds on that right there?
the final is that those parking spaces are now part of the streetscape project that's in front of the courthouse. It looks a lot better. It makes sense. They had recommended for a security standpoint that they did not want parking spaces directly in front of the courthouse. From a security standpoint, that made sense. So what you're doing tonight is formalizing that.
Or we had nothing in return like
We got nothing.
like the original.
Well,
agreement
we
came
did.
in.
I mean,
We get the parking on Union Street.
they've indicated their employees are encouraged to park in the far surface lots on Union Street. They've indicated those parking lots are signed so that after 5 and on the weekends, if they're open to public. What we had requested was for certain special events, the use of the closed-in parking, and that's what they had a concern about. And so, but this agreement runs for a year, so we can evaluate that and perhaps talk about under certain circumstances, we might have the use of that covered parking, because there's several hundred parking, about 200 parking spaces in there.
And just as a point of clarification, the original discussion of parking and safety was that if we gave up those 7 spaces, they would free up close to 165 spots at the Hayes Lot parking by moving people into the garage, moving the employees back to east of Union Street. So in fact, we've got a public parking lot. So we did gain some, we didn't gain maybe all of it.
But at a meeting prior to that Tom, Gary Merrill, it was a different story. We will give you this. So
Right, there was a change in administration and whatnot. And I think they probably had input from others who used the courthouse, and from a security standpoint, there was concerns about the enclosed parking. And so it allows us to revisit that. But I do think that the net is a gain in terms of the amount of spaces that the public has access to after 5 and on the weekends. And that's a good thing. Plus, there'll be, I think, as they develop the restoration of the old courthouse, I think some parking is going to be freed up as a result of that as well. So,
this is a thought. I was down at downtown Columbus, and the State House has parking underneath that. I would think parking next to the courthouse might be okay. I don't know. Food for thought.
bring it up in a year.
Yeah.
What is the wish of council on resolution 1816? You want to vote on this stuff tonight? Get it off the ballot?
Yeah, we've been talking about it
For years.
now. I'm going to move for approval of resolution 18-16.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Schaefer, a second by Mr. Jones. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Move for approval of resolution 18-17.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer, second by Mr. Jones. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
I move for approval of resolution 18-18.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer, second by Mr. Jones. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. Motion carries. Item 16 is consideration of ordinance number 18-19. Elaine, if you'll please read this into the record.
Ordinance number 18-19, an ordinance amending the 2018 appropriations ordinance to provide funding for performance-based economic incentive grant to CAMS Inc. to assist in upgrading electrical infrastructure that will allow the company to occupy 20,000 square feet of the Symmetry 2 building at 105 Innovation Court and declaring an emergency. Emergency clause, that this ordinance is hereby declared to be an emergency measure necessary to provide for the public peace, safety, health, and welfare of the city, and is necessary to finalize economic development incentives for this project, and as such will be in full force and effect immediately upon its passage. Kelsey?
Everybody, how was your morning?
Winding up again. I have a script, so I'm all scripted today, unfortunately. So my name is Kelsey Scott. I am the city's economic development specialist, and I'm speaking on behalf of the economic development department. Unfortunately, Sean was not able to make it today. So this resolution is to appropriate an additional $10,000 to the general fund economic development line item to pay for the $10,000 economic development performance-based incentive committed to CAMS by ordinance 1806. The money from that particular line item had been budgeted for the 2018 commitment to the Entrepreneur Center, and the CAMS project was not planned at the time of building the budget. We appreciate your consideration on this resolution so that we can continue to assist this company with occupying the Symmetry 2 building and ask for it to be passed with an emergency clause so that we can pay their electric contractors soon.
Any questions for Kelsey?
Nothing. All right, trying to get rid of me quickly.
What is the wish of
Yeah,
council?
we would,
Thank you, everyone.
obviously, we'd support the recommendation. This is an economic development tool that we're using to assist a company in locating in the city's new business park, Innovation Court, new extension of Sawmill Parkway. This is a Powell-based company that is relocating to Delaware. It's a positive development for us, and this was the Economic Development Reserve Fund, which we established a few years ago for this purpose. So we'll be earmarking the dollars that come back through the income tax payments back to the fund so that it can be replenished. So it's a fairly modest amount, but it has assisted this company. So we are recommending your favorable consideration this evening.
Thank you, Tom.
Madam Mayor, I move to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings on ordinance 1819.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Schaefer, a second by Mr. Hellinger. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes,
Mayor Riggle. Yes.
I move for approval of the emergency clause in ordinance 1819.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer, second by Mr. Hellinger. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes,
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
for the approval of ordinance 1819.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer, second by Mr. Hellinger. Any additional discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes,
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Item 17 is consideration of ordinance 1720. Elaine, if you'll please read this into the record.
Ordinance number 18-20, an ordinance supplementing the 2018 appropriations ordinance to provide funding to purchase a new pool pump for the Jack Florence Pool.
Thank you. Mr. Mueller?
Madam Mayor, City Council. So we have a pool pump that feeds the lap pool and the diving well. And it's this pool pump's about 12 years old. It's been rebuilt about twice in its lifetime. And at the end of, we had some leaking oil last year, but at the end of this year, we got it investigated and looked at. And the quote that came back to rebuild this was about $4,000 to $5,000, and that was not guaranteed that it would fix the pump. So being at the end of its lifespan, we recommend that we go ahead and purchase a new pump for this. And we've gotten some quotes from Patterson Pools. It's a company that the YMCA has used in the past, and we feel this is we recommend that we replace the pump at this time. And trying to get yeah, it's through Patterson Pool Pumps, and the replacement of the pump would be the supplemental that is requested. So If there's any questions, I can answer those.
$18,000 pump.
Yes.
How long does it last? What kind of warranty we get on those?
Well, 12 to 15 years is what these typically last.
Okay.
So we're at 12 years on this one right now. And like I mentioned, it's been rebuilt before, so as we dig into it, we're not sure what the final cost to repair this pump would be.
And how many times have we repaired the current one?
Twice.
Was it 4,000 each time?
No, it was, they were able to diagnose the problems and rebuild it. And at this point, though, the shaft has got a bend to it, and they're not sure if they can rebuild it at this point. So they've given us an estimate of about 4,000 to dig into it and hopefully repair it, but they're not guaranteeing that we'll repair the pump. So we may spend 4,000 and not end up still with a bad pump.
And how long does it take to order this?
I think they
Around the
can,
corner.
yeah, and that's why we're in there now, but they, it's about an 8-week turnaround.
Yeah, what are we gonna do with the old pump?
Well, it's non-repairable at this point. They have it in their quote to take that pump. I don't know if there's any value to that pump. If there's any value, we'll keep it. Even if there's parts off of it that we can get for this, we'll keep those parts. But and if there's if we can get some reimbursement from that pump, we might do that also.
Okay. Any other questions?
So you just passed tonight. Is that the idea?
We didn't put an emergency declaration on it, but it would be helpful so we can get this pump ordered and get it in before Memorial Day at this point.
Yeah.
That's my thought process.
One happy people with the pools.
Yeah, Memorial Day is our day it has to open.
I move to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings on ordinance 1820.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Jones, a second by Mr. Schaefer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
So I do not need to adopt emergency clause on this?
I don't think so if you vote for it. If there's one on there, you could vote for. Do you need it? Okay.
Is there one on the-
There's not. I don't have it.
Seven.
Okay.
If it's not on there, since it wasn't put on the packet, I don't think you can just add one at this reading because the public would know about it.
Okay.
Right, we can move ahead. I mean, it's definite.
Yeah, I think so.
I move for the approval of ordinance 18-20.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jones, second by Mr. Schaefer. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Need Lane to field read 18 and 19 to the record, please.
Ordinance number 18-21, an ordinance for Medrock LLC approving a zoning text amendment to the existing Willowbrook Farm Tract PUD overlay zoning text plan unit development to allow a modification to the maximum dwelling units and density to multifamily areas 3 and 4, to allow additional dwelling units in area 3 and removing units in area 4, thereby decreasing the overall units currently allowed in total located on the east side of Houck Road on approximately 36 acres on property zoned R6 multifamily with a PUD overlay. In ordinance number 18-22, an ordinance for Medrock LLC approving a combined preliminary and final development plan for multifamily area 3 of the Willowbrook Farm Tract for a 180-unit apartment complex on approximately 15.506 acres located on the northeast corner of Houck Road and DeGenova Way on property zoned R6 PUD, multifamily residential district with a planned unit development district.
Thank you. And typically, this is just a first reading. You aren't planning on going into details tonight, are you, Dave?
I'm not trying to do anything.
That's what I figured. So there will be we set a public hearing, didn't we?
Yes.
Yes. For the 26th, which is our next meeting at 7:30. It's okay. Okay,
Is that,
what?
I just want to make sure everybody's clear that there is an opportunity at the,
Public hearing at the next meeting.
26, 7:30.
Okay. City manager's report?
yeah, real quickly, small cell tower legislation. You'll recall that the city has been engaged principally with Dave and Darren in an effort to look at some compromise legislation. That legislation actually has made its way through the legislative process. There's proponent testimony this week on that. Dana McDaniel, the city manager of Dublin, has done an outstanding job of kind of keeping this issue, keeping people focused on the issue, but it looks like the outcome, I haven't had a chance to spend a lot of time on it with Dave, but I think it is workable from a community standpoint. These are the small cell towers that the utility companies want to locate on our various, our utility poles, our street lights and whatnot. And this provides a mechanism as to how that gets regulated. So that's moving along, which is good. So our effort with the Comma Group that the city is a member of, I think has paid dividends in that regard. We have a joint signing of the entrepreneurial agreement later this week with Ohio Wesleyan. This is part of, I believe, there's a Thursday morning kickoff. I think it's the Delaware Does. This is the initiative every month where they have entrepreneurs come in and pitch their ideas. So we're going to be doing that as part of that. I'll get the information out to City Council so you have it. And there was a really nice public event last week. I think you probably saw the picture of Jessica Ormeroyd and the State Superintendent of Disabilities in the newspaper regarding some of the efforts the city has made to address issues with respect to disabilities, in particular the audible signals on Sandusky and Williams. So that was it was nice to see some positive press on that. And that's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jones?
I have none tonight.
Mrs. Keller?
Nothing.
Mr. Browning? Mr. Hollinger?
Just two things. One, so we don't forget about it. At some point, I'd like to see us move forward with something regarding the bag.
Oh, the bag.
Yes.
And not the bag of nails, right?
Yeah, not the old bag of nails, no,
Okay.
no. The bag and the litter issues caused by that. And the second thing, kind of as a follow-up to the disabilities showcase, if you want to call it that, I'd like to mention our Cajun restaurant.
Oh, yes,
down
Jake
here.
Elbows, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
They were part of that as well.
Absolutely. I'd like to give them great.
In the Strand
They did a
Theater.
Wonderful job in that respect. So,
Yeah. George, you made me remember something. We have a joint meeting a week from tonight, not joint, but a work session regarding economic development. Carolyn and I and Kent will be meeting tomorrow afternoon to finalize the agenda for that. We'll get it out on Wednesday. That's really focused on economic development. So we will be providing some background information. Pardon?
That's our meeting.
That's our
Monday.
workshop meeting next Monday.
For Monday, okay.
Monday.
I thought you said Thursday.
No, a week from tonight, the 19th.
So we're meeting at 6 o'clock, right?
Yes.
6 p.m.
6 o'clock, yeah.
Thursday.
Yeah. No,
Monday.
a week from,
Okay.
good. So.
And are we doing that here?
Yes.
We're doing your house.
Yes. I think, yes, that's what our plan was, I think.
I have
Mr.
no
Sexton, okay. On Saturday, I had the opportunity to go to a meeting at the Post 102 and the AMVETS out on Park Avenue. They are bringing in the Eyes of Freedom Memorial, which is paintings, these huge murals that were done for the Lima Company, for the 23 that lost their lives. It is phenomenal. I pulled it up. You guys can look at my computer later. We're looking at the last week of May, the beginning of June, and we're going to do it at the Armory, the National Guard. It'll be here for probably 4 or 5 days, but I really want this to be a whole community involvement in this. So I'm really excited about it. We have a company that's going to kind of back it and pay for the majority of it. So just make sure you're all aware of it. So
We should invite you something like that.
yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, and with that, I will look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned at 7:54.
Gotta like that.
Yeah, I saw that.